Do you ever get the sneaking suspicion that you're giving way more in your relationships than you're getting back? I'm talking about when there's some kind of special occasion and you get them a watch and they get you a coffee mug. Or you're always the one driving over to their place, and on a night where you don't feel like driving but you'd really like to see them, well, they're just too tired. Or how about all the little energy sacrifices you make, focusing on them throughout their day and all the little things that they like and dislike, and gosh, I hope they like this kind of restaurant or this kind of food. But when you get there, they don't even remember that you're allergic to shellfish. You know, I go through my DMs and I see a pattern of a lot of girls who are really into these relationships, doing everything they can or everything they can possibly think of to make these guys happy, just to get dumped for another girl. How does this make you feel? Do you feel fulfilled? Or do you feel a little insecure and possibly taken advantage of? Why does this happen? Why is it so bad? And what can we do to prevent it? My name is Maria Adrianna, and for years I struggled with relationships. I used to jump through hoops for people who, as it turns out, didn't have very much respect for me. And the worst part was, I didn't even see it. Today, I'd like to teach you some of the lessons I learned about overgiving in the first half of my life, and as always, welcome to the other half. A lot of times we overgive in relationships because we come into them already feeling like we alone are not enough. And it turns into a real problem, because what tends to end up happening is good people will lose respect for you and eventually leave you. And not so good people will use you and then eventually leave you. This isn't just romantic relationships. I remember back into my high school years, there was this guy in my math class named Alec, and he was super cute and very popular, and every morning when he asked me for my math homework, I had no problem giving it up to him. I actually found my high school journal, and I was reading an entry that I had written about Alec. I was talking about what a wonderful person he was, what a great guy, and how lucky I would be if he would just be my boyfriend. Well, he never became my boyfriend, but we did have a relationship where one person knew exactly what to do to get what they wanted out of the other person. The moment he handed me back my math paper, it was like this invisible wall went up. There was no more smiles and winks and small talk. There wasn't even party invitations or an acknowledgement of my existence walking past me in the hallway. From the outside looking in, it's obvious that this guy was using me, and if I were to write a journal entry about good old Alec today, it would probably look very different. But at that time, I didn't have anybody to tap me on the shoulder and say, this guy is using you. And you can bet this dynamic of giving, expecting nothing in return, followed me into my adult relationships. I entered my first serious adult relationship feeling like I wasn't good enough, and I was always buying my boyfriend little gifts, which he gladly accepted, up until the day that he dumped me for another girl. Now, months later, we reconnected, and he was telling me about how he would do this thing where he would sporadically make her feel like he was about to dump her, so she would buy him a gift. And when I asked him, and she does this? He looked at me and chuckled and was like,
wouldn't you?
And it was like the glass shattered. And I finally saw him for who he really was. He was the kind of guy who had a game he ran on girls. He was using them for monetary gain. Now that's borderline psychotic and mean, and not everyone does this. But the problem is some people do. When you are a generous, giving person, and that's what you lead with all the time, some people will appreciate it, but some will take advantage of it. When I got older and was able to experience a healthier relationship, I had the opportunity to see what it was like to be on the other side of overgiving. I had a girl enter my life who was clearly in need of a friend, and she showed me this by constantly offering to come over and help me clean my house or run errands for me or take me places that I needed to go. The reason this freaked me out is because we had only been to lunch twice. This strategy completely ended up backfiring on her. As the relationship went on, She didn't act like she respected herself, and I couldn't respect her anymore either. And that's when I knew the relationship couldn't go on anymore. She was framing herself the wrong way. I wish she had shown up as herself, or at least as someone who had her own life and was getting to know me as a friend, not an intern, not some kind of unpaid assistant, maid, or butler. I'm sure in her heart, she really was a very generous and loving person, but she was giving that attribute of herself away to people she didn't even know. I mean, I could have been a gang leader, a drug dealer, a flat earther, and she would not have realized that she was automatically volunteering all of her love and energy and time to someone who didn't deserve it. And by the way, since I was someone who ended up ditching her, I didn't deserve it. Don't be someone else's free maid today. Show your self-love instead by painting your nails with OPI's short story. It's a beautiful two-coat cream that's perfect for the transition from spring to summer. And the best part, when your nails are wet, you can't lift a finger for anyone who doesn't deserve it. Now, because I wasn't certain I wanted to stay friends with her in the long run, I always turned down these offers to help. But just imagine if I was someone that for an entire year let her come over and mop my house and babysit my kid and run all my errands. Just imagine what that would have felt like on the day that I was finally like, meh, I don't want to be friends anymore. Now, I don't know if you know this, but I am a bit of a word nerd, and I looked up the exact definition of the word jerk. A jerk, by definition, is someone who treats others unfairly. So if you're in a relationship with someone who's only taking and never giving, they are, by definition, a jerk. And by the way, while you're up there, think the like button. When you lose yourself completely in a relationship and focus entirely on the other person, then if and when they do leave you, it won't be like you're losing one person you care about. It'll be like you're losing two. And while breakups are hard, it is a lot easier to get over one person than it is to get over the loss of two. And whenever these relationships end, you can always tell yourself, well, I was so nice and they're just a jerk, and the person after them is just a jerk, and the guy after that, I guess, was just a jerk, and the guy after that, and the guy after that, and the guy after that, and the guy after that. And suddenly everyone you've ever dated has just been a jerk. And rightfully so. Maybe they all were. But at some point you have to ask yourself, why are you acting like the kind of person that jerks are attracted to? The kind of person who always gives, never expecting anything in return. And they're happy to take it because they're jerks. So let's talk about some solutions to keep you from being used and abused in your future relationships. First, don't constantly volunteer to do things for other people. Even if they're complaining, they might just be complaining. Wait until they ask. And for those people out there who have no problem asking because they have no problem taking, I recommend making sure they would expend the same amount of energy doing something for you. If you're dating a guy who loves your cooking and starts to seem a little entitled to it, go ahead and ask him if he'll take your car out and get the oil changed. If that man does not joyfully reciprocate, get the out of the kitchen. Or better yet, make something good and delicious and healthy and eat it. Now, one thing that makes me crazy is whenever I suggest to girls that they try asking a guy for a favor to see if he's the kind of person that is reciprocal in relationships, they always look at me and they're like,
I don't like playing games.
oh, is that right? Because your brain does. It's running this sick game on you where it has you convinced that you can give everything to everyone else except yourself and never expect anything in return. And magically, it will all end up okay. I mean, right? When you've already invested so much love and care and time out of your life and they just leave, that's fine? Come on. If they deserve a favor, so do you. Make sure they would do it for you before you get too invested. Tip number 2, create boundaries with your money and your gifts. I want you to try this crazy idea where when a guy asks you out on a date and the bill comes for what may be the first time in your life, don't jump to get your pocketbook. Let this guy show you that when he asked you out, it was a promise that he was going to show you a good time. Let him prove it by paying for the date. Just try this one simple act and see what it does for your dating life. As far as gifts go, I would actually be pretty strict on this. The first year that you're dating someone, Christmas present, birthday present, if Valentine's Day or 6-month anniversaries are particularly important to you, go buy a $2 card at the drugstore and only give it to them if they give you something first. I know this sounds extreme, but if you are someone who really struggles with overgiving, you might not be able to see reality, and you do not want to run the risk of blowing your bank account on someone who you don't even know if they're going to be with you in 7 months. Men aren't impressed by your money or your gifts. They're not attracted to your big, sexy pocketbook. Men want your time. They just want you. And that comes to our third solution. Believe that you are enough. People who care are pretty hard to come by in life. And they have someone who just flat out cares if they got promoted at work, or if they got a flat tire on the way home, or if their favorite breakfast sandwich came back on the menu. Having someone in their life who genuinely cares about them is more valuable than you might realize. And if you are getting value from this information, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified whenever I post a new weekly video. My name is Maria Adrianna. You did not have to live my life, but I certainly hope you can learn something from it. As always, thank you for visiting The Other Half.